sexual harassment. She's not going to teach us how to do sexual harassment, but actually, and how to avoid, I guess, and what's our policy on sexual harassment. Winnie is a past scholar who went to UK, and she currently works for DOJ, the Department of Justice, as a prosecutor, right? You still work? Yes, okay. Sorry, the lawyers are highly sought after, so they change up quite often, so let's double check. Okay, Winnie, shall I hand over to you? Thank you. Okay, she's going to do some technical work for this.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Winnie and I am a Rotary Scholar for the year of 2006 to 2007. And I was assigned to the University of Nottingham in England, where I did a Master's in Public International Law. And actually, I have been involved with Rotary for many, many years, when I have been an interactor and also a Rotaractor. So after that, I became a Rotary Scholar. And currently, I'm still a Rotaractor with the Rotary Club of Victoria, in which I have been a past president. So it's been many, many years that I've been with the Rotary. And now I'm working, as Eugene had just said, I'm now a lawyer. I'm working at the Department of Justice of the Government of Hong Kong in the Prosecutions Division. So maybe that is why they invited me to talk about this really boring topic of sexual harassment. So please bear with me for my lawyer talk for just 5 to 10 minutes, so that your awareness about sexual harassment could be aroused and you know what to do if, unfortunately, you get harassed while being on your scholarship duties. So first of all, some definition. Since I'm a lawyer of Hong Kong, probably I can only advise on the law of Hong Kong. And so, according to section 2(5), subsection 5 of the Sex Discrimination Ordinance of Hong Kong, here are the definition. A person harasses another person sexually when 1. He or she makes an unwelcome sexual advance or an unwelcome request for sexual favors to her, or 2. Engages in other unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature in relation to her, in circumstances in which a reasonable person would anticipate that the subject of intention, that means the person being harassed, would be offended, humiliated, or intimidated. So basically, the test for sexual harassment is the reasonable man standard, which is well determined by common sense. So if the general public or the common people thinks that certain acts are harassment, then most likely it is sexual harassment. However, the laws in Hong Kong, sexual harassment is not a criminal offense, it's a civil offense. Okay? So, if you call the police, it will become something else, which I'll talk about later. It is a civil offense, so only civil remedies could be sought after. However, in Hong Kong, there is the Equal Opportunities Commission, which deals with complaints concerning sexual harassment, which commission will be willing to help. And also, under the laws of Hong Kong, sexual harassment protects people in workplace, in education institutions, and in organizations. So to a certain extent, in Rotary family, you will be protected by the Sex Discrimination Ordinance, since it's also an organization. And under the Hong Kong law, there are 2 types of sexual harassment actually. First one is the misuse of authority. So in the workplace, so basically it means a boss harassing his or her secretary. If secretary doesn't want it, and he harasses her so that she could get a promotion or pay rise. Or in the university, a professor harasses a student so that she could pass her examination. Or worse still, in Rotary, your counselor harasses you so that you can have a good time during your scholarship year, if there is no consent, but I'm sure this is not going to happen. And the second circumstance is the hostile environment, which means verbal or physical contact in a sexual nature, which creates an environment which will substantially affect the work of that person. And it intimidates her, and it makes him or her really uncomfortable, perhaps. An example would be a university professor asks you to go see him in his office, while his office is stuck with porn posters, or that kind of thing, or he plays on YouTube some obscene videos for you to see, then that is sexual harassment. So I've talked about the definition in Hong Kong, which I'm sure it is just very common sense and you understand what it means. And according to the training manuals of the Rotary International, it's very general. It involves unwanted touching, offensive or suggestive remarks, or simply gestures with sexual overtones. Well, that's a very wide definition, so it mainly involves any communications, interactions which are sexual in nature, which is something that you do not consent to. And also, one point to note, unwanted touching. In fact, if it is unwanted touching and you do not consent to it, it is already a criminal offense. If it is not indecent, it would amount to common assault. Common assault is just a contact which is unwanted, and this is criminal. The person who touches the other person, even though not indecently, will be punished by the courts of law. And the other one, about unwanted touching, may amount to indecent assault, or worse still, even rape, if you don't want it without consent. And what does indecent assault mean? Indecent amount, the word indecent is, again, according to the reasonable man standard. What is indecent is simply what common sense tells you. Perhaps you are touched on your hips, on your thighs, or maybe on your breasts, or even on your face if you don't want it. They all could amount to indecent assault. Although this definition of RI also includes unwanted touching, you may have to think this unwanted touching may amount to a criminal offense, which you will have to be careful as well. Okay, before you know this, RI has zero tolerance against abuse and harassment. This is probably, I think, before I talk about it, you know. So maybe I'll give you some more examples of what sexual harassment could be. Well, this could be someone having repeated attempts to ask you out for a date when you don't want to go, or sexual jokes, comments, other suggestive remarks, which has a sexual nature and you feel insulting after you listen to it. And some sexual propositions or some inducement or pressure for you to have sex with the other person. And sometimes some obscene gestures, maybe, I don't know, the foul language gestures, or with something which make you feel uncomfortable, or again, inappropriate touching. And even if that person calls you persistently, which amounts to a nuisance, or keep writing letters to you, asking you out for a date, or even ask you out for a sexual relationship, these are also sexual harassment. And of course, the most serious type, as I've said, it would be sexual assault, or forced sexual intercourse, which means rape. These are examples of sexual harassment, and even criminal offense, which we'll have to be careful. And again, the Rotary Foundation has zero tolerance against abuse and harassment. So, if you are so unfortunate to have really encountered these things, what should you do? Well, then it depends on whether you wish the police to be involved. I think the first person you have to call is your host counselor. If you know that each of you will be assigned a host counselor when you arrive, even before you arrive at your host country, you have to let him or her know and ask her what he or she would do, because it's likely that your host counselor has some, know the person that harasses you, and maybe he could help you in some way or another. And also, I think you will need to, if you are going from your home country, such as Hong Kong, I think you need to let a person like Eugene know that you have got into trouble. You cannot keep your home district in the dark. So basically, within the Rotary, you'll have to report to your counselor in your host country and also in your whole country that you trust, and let them know there's something wrong and they can do something for you. And on a personal level, what can you do? Well, as recommended by the Equal Opportunities Commission of Hong Kong, you can speak up at the time and ask him not to do it again, and then you can just stop talking to it from that moment onwards, and then you can tell your counselor. And also, if you really intend, or after discussing with your counselor, it is a serious assault or harassment, which legal action will be taken, please keep a record, written record of the incidents, date, time, places, and whether any witnesses present, the nature of the harassment. So basically, keep those in record so that if it is got so bad that the police will have to be called, you have a memory and you can remember what it was about and be accurate about it. And of course, you can tell your friends and tell your family to make yourself feel better, and I'm sure they will be able to give you ways for you to help. And if the harassment happens in the university, I think you have to let the relevant officers in the university know, and so that the university could take action. Maybe the university will help you call the police, or maybe the university will deal with the matter through internal disciplinary actions or according to their own policy. But if this gets bad, you really have to let the university know. So if it get really serious, probably after consulting your counselor, you'll have to call the police. So to wrap up, the most important thing once you have encountered sexual harassment is to let your counselors know. And I'm sure they'll all be very, very helpful, and they'll be able to help you get through that crisis and unhappiness. So this is my very short presentation on sexual harassment. And I wish you all the best in your scholarship year, and I am sure none of this is going to happen to you. So Eugene, do you have anything to add?